Hey guys, welcome to this video. So today I want you to understand why it creates depth and why reverb creates depth, and I want you to understand that it's actually delay that creates the main depth of a sound. So the thing is, when an instrument is right in front of you, like right next to your ear, you get way more of the direct signal compared to the reverb signal, because obviously the instrument is so close to you that you get way more of the direct signal that's produced by the instrument compared to the signal that first bounces on the walls, reverbs, and comes back to your ears, right? That makes sense. And so the further away the instrument is from you in a 3D space, the more you will get a blend of the direct signal of the instrument, which is still there, but also the signal that bounces on the walls and comes back to your ears. So more far away, more wet signal. I think we pretty much all know that. But now what creates that illusion of depth and kind of distance? So it's actually the early reflections. It's actually delay. It all comes down to delay. So let me demonstrate why. So pay attention to this sound here. Sounds quite dry, right? And instantly it sounds far away. It sounds like it's in the back of a room. And look, there is almost no decay whatsoever, only 200 milliseconds. Might as well be zero, it would sound the same. But it's 100% wet, so I'm getting all the early reflections. All of this is basically just early reflections, and that's what tells your ear the size of the room. Let me show you how reverb basically works. So first you get the sound, the dry sound, which is produced by your violin or whatever, and then you get a silence, which is the time between that dry sound that you produce and the point at which it will reach the first wall and then come back. So the first reflection of the sound will actually be this one here, and actually this one. And that's actually the first time the sound will bounce and come back to your ear. So not the direct sound. And that's the beginning of a reverb tail. And for a few reflections, you will get like a few echoes. So basically you will get for example, the left wall, the right wall, which is a bit more far away, takes a bit more time to come back to your ears. The back wall, which is even more far away. And then the first wall again, second time. Okay, this is just an example. It's not literally like that, but that's the point. The sound will first bounce a few times and come back to your ears. And the delay between these echoes that come back to your ears is what will determine the size of the room. So basically, your ears will kind of know, oh, that sounds like a medium room, that sounds like a small room, that sounds like a huge hall, just based on the characteristics of these early reflections. As the reverb gets more busy and you get more of the echoes close together, it turns into a smooth pad, which is basically the tail. So the tail is of course natural and expected, but if you just have tail, it's basically a synth pad. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to feel any kind of space from it, really. I mean, of course, you will get a sense that it's kind of a big room, but you're not going to get that initial depth, because all of the initial depth is kind of dictated by the early reflections. So that's why, even if you have no tail, depth is created just with this. So now that you understand that it's early reflections and basically these first echoes of the sound which create the 3D depth, then it makes more sense how other effects work. So here I'm just going to create a delay, very short, so too short to tell that there are several repeats, only a few milliseconds, but like with one repeat on the left and one repeat on the right after that. And as you can see, it almost sounds like a real space. See how it almost creates a room? Well, because it's actually very close from early reflections. It's very close from early reflections, how they work. Basically, if I'm doing this, I'm kind of simulating that first repeat and the second repeat. So you have dry sound, first repeat, second repeat. That's almost what I'm simulating here. So of course it doesn't work as well as the reverb, but it's just to explain for you to understand the concept and why it actually works. So now that you understand that early reflections create the 3D depth and distance, the tail becomes kind of secondary. Of course, it's not secondary, it's important too. If you just have early reflections and you don't have any tail, it's not gonna sound like you're in the hall, so you need both. But when you set your reverbs, your hall reverbs, for example, keep in mind the early reflections. And how you get more early reflections is actually by adding more wet signal, right? Because the wet signal is going to be all the green stuff I showed before. So all of this is going to be the wet signal. And here's the final demonstration. So you got that pulse sound I showed before, but now that pulse is routed to that long hole just a little bit. And I have that room on it, that short room, very short room. So pay attention to how close it feels with the hole. Yeah, sure, you can hear there is a hole to it. There is reflections of the hole to it, but there is still very much a feeling of proximity. But if I just turn this reverb off and instead I put that room but 100% wet, instead of just a bit, that room is actually 100% wet. Sure, you don't get any tail, but it's massively different. It actually transforms the sound itself a lot more. With the hole, which is sent less wet, you feel that the sound is still very much close to you, and like the reverb is almost like a separate layer. Like a separate layer. If you put more wet, but even a smaller space, now there is no separate layer. You feel like this synth is playing on the back of a room somewhere. And yeah, that's all the difference. So I'm not saying to put all your strings in a 200 millisecond room, of course, but you get my point of how the early reflections can transform a sound a lot more. So no, I'm not saying that the tail is not important. In any normal space, of course, early reflections and the tail go hand in hand. But basically try to see it this way. If you have tail without early reflections, it's just like a dead pad. If you have early reflections without tail, of course it doesn't make sense. But what is going to transform the dry sound the most and like change the initial texture and 3D depth the most is going to be the early reflections. That's what's going to transform the sound. The tail is going to be a natural effect of a real space, but it's not going to really transform the sound as much. As you could hear when I put the room before, it really massively transformed the initial texture, the high-end response and everything. And that's because of all the damping, air dampening, air absorption of a natural space. And most of that is dictated by the early reflections first. And that's why a more wet signal feels like it's transforming the texture of the sound the most in terms of 3D depth, initial 3D depth. So yeah, hopefully that's interesting, guys, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.